What's the first topic? I don't know.
How do you spell topics?
I think it's T. No, that's already wrong. T O
Well,
P.
it was just funny because we were putting this document together on Google Docs, and then I was like, I'm just gonna mess with it, and I spelled topics completely wrong, and then
I
I like
spelt
your
it
version of
wronger.
it.
I spelt it wronger, didn't
Terrapix.
I?
You spelled you spelled it the most wrong, most successfully. So it's Terrapix. So I'm pretty sure this is not a real topic, but it's a good warm-up topic.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
after that, we how to successfully go rogue, which is important.
Yeah. Like, in what context is that? Like pirate rogue, or like I don't know, go rogue
In
as
any
in
context, maybe in a programming context. Let's talk about it in a programming context. Have you ever gone rogue?
I don't know what that would mean in a programming context.
I guess it means like you had to do something and you just went completely off, did something else. You went rogue.
I've done that a lot, I think. I think that's the very definition of how I work.
I think every programmer goes rogue.
Yeah.
I mean, would you define going rogue as doing something good or something bad, or is it just is
No,
that
I
just what
mean,
makes it rogue? The fact it could be good or bad.
I think it's kind of just doing something that no one else wants you to do, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what if it's like you had a task to do something, and then you start doing it, and you realize I can make this 10 times better if I go rogue right now and do something else, which includes the thing you originally were supposed to do. Then that'd be totally awesome, assuming it all works out. Or you can go rogue and do completely the opposite to what you're supposed to do, and then people are like, "What the hell? That's not what we were supposed to do."
Well, I guess that's just someone doing not what they're supposed to do, right? So I guess that is still rogue. Like, it's all technically still going rogue. It's just you can go rogue in a good way or go rogue in a bad way, right?
Yeah, I guess the question is trying to figure out when the right time is to go rogue, and if you can make sure it's always the good one, or is it
Well,
good to go rogue sometimes because you might get a good outcome?
it depends, right? If you're in like a sprint or something like that and you go rogue and you
Hmm.
do something that completely was outside of the sprint, when you have like a really fine, like really well planned sprint, then you're not really helping anybody, are you?
Unless the thing that made you go rogue was helps you complete the next two sprints twice as quickly.
Oh well, that's an edge case. I don't
Hmm.
know I don't know if you could really
But I
plan for
think
that.
no, you can't. I think that's the thing of going rogue is you get unexpected output from it. Sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad.
Yeah.
But I think there is a certain amount of all programmers have to go rogue sometimes. I think going rogue is important.
I mean, look at my hat. This is rogue, right? I got my hat on backwards.
It's
I'm an
backwards.
absolute
I mean,
definition of rogue,
it should be forwards.
but it's backwards.
I think that's debatable.
It's like people who wear the
I mean,
headphones
I'm not
upside
wearing
down.
a hat. Does that make me rogue?
You could wear headphones upside down as well.
Technically, it works. That's rogue.
It doesn't technically work. It works very poorly.
I mean, you can LaForge as well. You LaForge
Oh
your
yeah, of
headphones.
course, the LaForge. It doesn't really stay in place though.
No,
Oh, that's really
LaForge can
disorientating.
make that happen.
That really disorients me because they're noise canceling headphones. When you have like one ear in,
All right.
it like really messes you up, and you're like,
Hmm.
all right,
I'm
what
finding
else?
actually in the office when we do.
Go
I was
on.
just gonna say, I find in the office. You reminded me because of headphones. Is I'm having this like struggling thing where when we're doing stand up remotely, and we have three people in the same room, and then another four or five people in a different room. Well, remotely. Is I it seems like in this context, I'm fine wearing like headphones, but when they're talking, for some reason I like have to take one ear out and just hear with one
You
ear.
mean when the remote team are
Um,
talking?
and when we're talking as well, both. It's
Oh,
like something like multiple people all at once. When it's like a one-on-one or one-to-one each time, seems okay. But when like multiple people are talking, I like have to have one ear out.
yeah.
I'm
I
not sure
mean,
why.
I don't
Part
know.
of it's to do with like I part of it's for me is not hearing my own voice. But for some reason,
Ah, yeah.
I can hear my own voice better when we're doing this now at the same place.
Do your headphones like feedback? Or they do they not?
Um, I guess they might be. Maybe that's why I can hear myself better with these ones,
It
but
might
not
just
with
be
the
because you're in a
ordinary
room
headphones I have at work.
by yourself, perhaps.
Hmm.
Because the office is particularly echoey.
Right. But I'd use the earbuds and not the headphones. Maybe the headphones would be better. Maybe they are feeding back slightly or something,
I
or
mean, it's
helping.
not a problem for me because obviously these cancel out a lot of noise that's external. Um, but it's
But
still, I know what
does
you
it
mean.
feedback your own voice?
No, they don't. It doesn't. It does through this microphone, but this doesn't have. This has its own microphone, but I don't use it because you have to have a stupid adapter to get the microphone to work. So I don't use it. But
Not really.
this doesn't feed back through the headphones. Only my big ridiculous mic that I don't want to touch because it makes a lot of noise.
So you can't hear
Does.
yourself right now.
No, I can, but only with this microphone.
You can hear yourself.
Yes, but at work I can't because I
So,
don't have this big
so
microphone.
right. And does it drive you nuts not hearing your own voice? Because I can't.
It makes it a lot harder, especially when other people are talking on the other end and they're feeding your voice back delayed.
Right. Right.
It's the most
Yeah,
infuriating
that's
thing.
definitely a problem. It drives me nuts, and I didn't realize how much it drove me nuts until we started doing the remote stand-ups. But it's something I need to try and figure out because I have to take one earbud out so I can hear. But I did just recently realize, due to just playing around with our audio settings before we started, which was that for some reason my audio was set to be biased to the left earbud. Left ear.
How long has that
So
happened?
whenever I was wearing the right one, I don't know. It must have been months, but I hadn't bothered to change it and hadn't noticed before. So for months, well, whenever I've been using it, I'm like putting the right one in. And I'm like, I can barely hear through this. It must be like clogged up or dirty or blocking the audio or something. And then changing to the left one, um, which was like, this is crystal clear. I can hear everything. It's really loud. I thought the earbuds were broken.
I spent a while with something like that. The same thing with the balance was for some reason completely one-sided, and I thought that my headphones were broken for ages. But then I realized after using them
Mm.
on Windows, I was like, oh, they're fine on Windows. There must be some stupid thing.
I re- I think I remember now. I had a crappy pair of headphones just for at the office, not the ones I'm using now because I bought new ones when we had a long time ago. Anyway, and they were breaking, and one of them was not as loud, and so I tried to even them out by changing the system preferences just so that it would be even on both rather than the other. And I hadn't changed it since then, so it was a really old pair of earphones I've done that with. So at least now, thanks to this session, I realized that I can make it equal.
It's doing something like this, you finally realize all of your audio settings are wrong.
All of them were wrong. All of them. That's
Well,
good.
actually,
So
you've
I got off on a tangent.
no, you've actually brought us to something which is not one of the topics we were going to talk about. But actually, first, before we get into what I think we were moving towards, maybe we should do like a kind of like who we are kind of thing, because we've like been going on for a while and we haven't really explained to anyone who may be
You're
watching
gonna have
this.
to cut this in at the beginning.
Yeah,
You're gonna cut this in at the
I'm
beginning.
not going to do that. I can't be bothered. I'm too
Just
lazy.
like cut it here.
Yeah, I'll just put an annotation that says if you want to know who we are, go here, and then put an annotation when they go there to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can do that.
So should I start?
Sure.
All right. So hello everybody. I am Bill Nunny, and otherwise known as Big Tall Bill on the internet and everywhere else. I work with this fine gentleman, Alan, and this is something we're starting new. I've been running a YouTube channel for a few months now, so I'm quite used to talking and stuff. Alan, you've not done this before, but we did do a podcast once a long time ago. But anyway, I'll let you introduce yourself before we get into stuff.
Yeah, as you said, I'm Alan Hamlin, and as you said, you've been doing this for a little while, whereas I actively try not to talk to people, especially on the internet. So that's the difference. And I mean, you didn't really talk about what you do. I mean, you're the lead programmer for a social media marketing company, which is Market Me Suite, which is also a partner company to Localbox, and I am the principal architect there. So Bill and I work very closely together on building great software.
I'm a code monkey.
And beyond. Yeah, you're a code monkey, and I hit you with a stick. Code faster.
You don't hit monkeys with sticks.
Yeah, that'd be cruel.
Yeah, no.
Hit you with a banana, and then you can eat it.
Well, that's all right, actually, because then it tenderizes the banana. Makes it easier to digest.
Exactly.
Right. All right. So anyway, the thing that that we got that out of the way. Did you have anything extra to say?
Well, we should probably add I just add is obviously we're both from the UK, but we currently live stateside in the United States, in the Boston area.
We live in America.
America. It's pretty cool. So yeah, obviously we might bump into people from time to time in meetups and such if we go to any.
Yeah, maybe. Or if I mean, it's kind of a rare thing these days.
Should say hi. It is, but there are a few coming up, and I think we should go to them.
Are they to do with programming
and things? Yeah, there's a Facebook one coming up, I think, actually. But,
okay.
It's about data at scale, I think. So maybe we should.
They know all about that.
They certainly do. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good introduction. People know who we are now.
Yeah, finally. All right, so the thing that we were heading towards, which was interesting, was to me anyway, is doing remote stand-ups and how that has kind of, we're quite new to doing remote stand-ups. I mean, we've only been 3 weeks, I suppose, now into that, and it's been working out pretty mixed success rate, I think, so far. But I think it's all technology related problems.
Most of it is that you really do need a consistent internet connection on both ends, because we've been using Skype for it, and I find we're like, what did you say? And I'm like this, pinning the headphones to my ears. Like, I think I heard what you said. You did that. And then
and like the constant sort of there's the constant sort of talking over of people, and the problem is, I think, on both ends, sometimes you have your mics, 2 mics are active at the same time for different people, and so when you talk, and they didn't use headphones initially, so there was this crazy reverberation. Although I think we're finally getting there with it. It's it took moving to Hangouts.
I think they just need a. Right, they need a speakerphone though. That's all they need, is one speakerphone in the middle, like the Jabra one. In fact, we could use it for ourselves on our end. We just
like the circle ones you just put down.
Yeah. If they had one of those, then they wouldn't need to keep muting and unmuting microphones, and it would be fine. Although today's stand-up went particularly well, I thought, simply because the project manager called us out by name for each person to go through, rather than everyone going, I'll go next, and then 2 people going, I'll go next all at once, and it just slows things down and uncoordinated. It was the first time we've literally done that.
I think definitely the route to a more successful stand-up is having somebody who's there to push it along and get it done, because the idea of them is they're supposed to be really quick updates. Yeah, the thing with Scrum and stuff is it's all really like. It's kind of like I'm trying to figure out what the value is. Like, is there still a value to it? I think, especially now, there is, because we're working with a remote development team, and they number about the same as us in terms of totally active people. there's a few contractors and stuff, but
Right.
they're not in on the Scrum stuff. So keeping that contact is really important, and it works. Getting that system right is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think
It's crucial.
it's crucial. Yeah, like it's the benefits outweigh the the downsides and the
I
challenges.
think the most underutilized part of stand up is when someone has a problem. Um, People forget to call out the problems. They're more interested in talking. It's almost less interesting the things that they did more than the things that they're stuck on.
Yeah, actually, I'm guilty of that as well, right? And it's funny because I think about, I think back on it and I'm like, I think the main problem is I just don't remember if I've had a problem. Like, because I'm not keeping track of them.
I tend to try and keep a notes document open up for the day now, and as I do things, I type into the notes, and then I can look back on it. Or if I've forgotten, I'll try and go back and put it in. But notes, I've consistently been using notes now for several weeks, just on the Mac, the notes program, because it syncs with the phone and stuff like that. And it's a good way of remembering, because you're right, half the battle is remembering what you did 24 hours ago, and it's harder than you think to
Yeah.
remember what you did in 24 hours.
Well, yeah, and it's
Um,
like because so much
so,
can, especially in a large team, right? And especially a kind of remote team where you're working in chat, and sometimes you're not working in chat, and you're working on like
mhm.
with a video chat like this or something, and then maybe even calling actual calls and stuff. So there's no one place to go back and look at what's happened, you know. So having that notes
Right,
thing is something I could probably do.
right. I recommend it. I think it's pretty good. It's just a very lightweight notes program, and I like the iCloud sync. It's on
I
everything.
think the problem is, right?
I have too many
Oh,
things
so you
in
actually
notes.
use Notes, the application.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because I thought you were just like saying, I thought you were just saying like, oh, you were using like a text document called Notes or something.
Oh, no, no, no. This is the native Notes application. It works. I think it works pretty well. I like the way it works simply because it's so simple, and like the first line you type into the document is the name of the document thereafter, and then the search, it fully indexes everything into like its own search engine inside the program. So you can search for notes from years ago and stuff, and it'll pull them up with a keyword straight from the
Does
document.
it? Oh,
So
bloody
it's
hell.
easy to find things.
You don't know if you heard that or not. There's some
Sorry,
crazy dogs outside.
what was it?
Dogs, like,
I
because
heard something. I
I'm
wasn't
right
sure.
near the front door. I don't know how well this
You
microphone
got
mutes
behind
that.
going.
It's only off to the side, so I don't.
It did pick it up.
Right, yeah, I thought it did. It's
They go on
really
now.
distracting. Because
For
I can
more.
hear it much louder than you can, I think.
Mm.
Sorry, anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like the notes thing. Yeah, does it sync across everything?
It does. I mean, all your Apple stuff, phones, and I think it will even sync with Gmail as well. You can have like synchronized notes and stuff. You can have like remote accounts. So pretty much everything you would need it would sync with.
That
I
sounds
think it
pretty cool.
helps. I try and use it, especially in meetings as well, because you can take notes in a meeting. My notes tend to be very short, just like keywords to trigger a memory, so I can remember what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as good as that. I have to put like more detail in them because I will forget what my single words mean. Like, within hours of writing
Right.
them, I'll forget. But I've been using just a Sublime text document to store things that
Mhm.
I don't keep in my anywhere else. They're things which are temporary. It's almost like a clipboard, basically. That I use. That's what I
Right.
use it for. But yeah, so
But overall, it works.
what did we put on our
But I think
topics?
the stand-up.
Do you have more to say? Continue.
So no, no, I don't have any more on stand-up except for the fact that I think we're doing it quite well. It could be better, and
Yeah.
we'll figure out how that goes, and we can kind of report in on the
I
next
think actually you said to me the other
podcast.
day
What changed?
something interesting, which was that everybody. I don't know if I don't know if you said it, but anyway, it's something I heard somewhere. This is why I can't remember anything, and this is why I have to write everything down in detail. But it's I heard somewhere that it's everyone has their own kind of version of Scrum, and every company doesn't really employ. Yeah, it was you. Okay, yeah, and they don't really employ the same version. So it's kind of you kind of try to implement it, but you need to settle into something which is your own thing that works for you, right? Mm-hmm. So hopefully we get to that point.
So they tend to find, right. I mean, most companies will, I mean, there are some companies, I'll take it back slightly. A lot of companies do Scrum exactly as is. And you could kind of consider our company to be doing Scrum, almost in its purity. But when you already look at it, there's things which aren't being done, which are part of Scrum. Like we haven't done a product backlog. We also haven't done a proper set of user stories and things like that. So although it already looks at, at the top level, like we're doing it exactly right, we already are implementing our own version of Scrum. And that's what I kind of meant across the board is larger companies find that Scrum's either too rigid or doesn't offer particular features required for their product development flow. So they'll modify Scrum to fit them. But Scrum is almost like a template, to manage software. It has some key principles which do work. And then from there, you can adapt it and coordinate it in a certain way. Perhaps it's like, well, a company that doesn't have as a regular release cycle, perhaps it's a product which is seasonal, for example, and you get a chance to have long development cycles and it's preferred to be done that way. Well, Scrum might not work entirely right for that, or, just as a rough example. So yeah, you're right. It is modified. So Spotify actually had used Scrum, and now they use their own version.
Oh yeah, Spotify. They have like a crazy. I don't even remember what it is because
it's like I think it's like pods and pod managers, and they have like small teams of 8. So I think they get like something like 8 to 10 people, and then they break off into 2 separate ones, and each one focuses on a specific element of an application.
I think that's something that's
deployed to that.
It's really it really requires a large number of people, right?
I mean, that's why larger companies really do modify it for purpose. Scrum actually only really works in much smaller development teams, under 10, really.
It does seem to be the case.
And then you need to have multiple Scrums, because otherwise, stand-up gets too long. Stand-up takes an hour instead of, 15 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah, we definitely had those before when we did stand-up wrong.
When we had 10 people.
It's when stand-up became more of a meeting and not stand-up.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, shall we move on to any of those random topics, which I think I put them in.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up, you did. Information overload is one of the topics, dealing with logs and automated systems.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of put that in because I thought that was just something I randomly had the thought of because I recently hooked up Sentry.
What were you thinking?
Well, I recently hooked up Sentry to send basically all of its new. Yeah, I think it's like new errors and any errors that go over 20 in an hour to the chat software we use called Slack. And it goes into a specific channel in Slack. So if anyone wants to know, Slack is like an IRC kind of thing. It's just like a private company chat client. It's free, I think, so you can go and like have a look at it. I think it's just slack.com or something like that. Anyway, I'll put a link somewhere for it if
you're already using HipChat. Yeah. If you're already using HipChat, you might prefer Slack, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So the really cool thing about Slack is you have a million integrations that it can hook into, including GitHub and everything. It's a great development tool because we basically have any commit that anyone pushes anywhere goes into the main dev window, and pretty much all the generic dev chat goes on in there. And if there's any specific dev chat, people will talk to each other directly rather than through the public channels. And anyway, why I brought up the information overload was that Sentry can become quite a thing, and it can be there, and there might be people who want to watch it but aren't actually interested all the time in that thing, and it can become a bit of an information overload situation. But for instance, me, right, I tend to watch all of the stuff, so for me, and I've suffered from information overload a lot because I like to know all the information, which can be a problem, when you're trying to actually process it.
You know what might be better?
Yeah, what might be better?
Maybe it would be better to actually change it to, this is, I don't know if it's even possible, but let's just talk wishful thinking for a moment. Each unique kind of error that comes up in Sentry, perhaps it should just create a gyro ticket that can be put in the backlog.
That would actually be a really good thing because, most of them have to be resolved. They aren't usually things which are supposed to happen, right? So.
Every one of them should be resolved. They can obviously be debated.
So actually, there are a few cases where you wouldn't want it to happen. Mainly for some, because we have it hooked up to our front end code as well, right? So it sends us JavaScript errors and things like that. And the thing is, you wouldn't want it necessarily to do everything because there might be a user who's using I don't know, a very old browser or something like that. Anyway, a browser that's not supported technically. And you wouldn't want something like that just breaks something like require.js, something that just doesn't work with that. And you end up getting an exception, which you can't solve because that's just not possible. But then again, I suppose you at least you get to see it. Someone's using that thing, so maybe you should support that thing.
Yeah, I mean, right. What about if it was, still put into a gyro case, but then you could kind of make that decision on whether it should be just resolved there and there or never seen again, or whether it should really be looked into.
Oh, I guess that's true, actually. What you could do is you could have it so that it's never able to reopen a ticket.
Right.
So
exactly. And
they're all unique.
Because the biggest thing with all those errors is that they don't make it into backlogs. They don't make it into sprints.
Yeah, and that's a bit of a problem at the moment, because at the moment I've just been looking at them and been like, I should probably fix this because this looks like a problem, and go fix it. But that's probably something that we need to figure out in a meeting or something.
But it's always been the case with exception handling. I don't think there's ever been a time where we've used it to directly create cases which we can then work on them slowly over time, because some of them could have been around for a long time. They're not necessarily world-ending problems.
I guess if we're talking,
have zero problems and work down. Sorry,
the delay is really ridiculous. Anyway. Sorry to interrupt you there, but basically what I was going to say was, if you come back to information overload, you kind of just move the overload to someone else. Like, it just moves to maybe someone who has to deal with the product, right? So then you move it to them instead of just the developers.
Right.
So I don't know. It's
well, and that's a good thing.
I guess so.
It's the project manager's job.
Yeah, but you don't want everybody to be overloaded, or any one person to be overloaded. And Sentry errors in particular, they're quite volume.
So that's really where, essentially no one could be overloaded in this situation. Here's what I think could happen, is the theory, is if you could have Sentry errors or exception handling errors go into cases, into Jira, into the backlog, then when you do product backlog grooming or sprint planning, that's when you start to review at least some of the cases to see which ones make it into the sprint. That way you work with everybody to see which ones make it. You put it off. Because, I always talk about you want the flat lines of productivity and you just don't want it to go up and down unless you've got something completely critical like the system's on fire and you need to go and purchase a fire extinguisher, come back and spray it on the server and put it out. That's literally the only time you really
I don't think you would get exceptions in that case.
No, this is a different thing. I'm talking about just productivity in general. When the building's on fire, you might want to leave.
That would be great, actually, if the fire alarms were hooked up to Sentry as well. So whenever the fire alarms went off, it would send a Sentry new error. The building is on fire. You probably shouldn't be looking at this error.
Your building is on fire. Yeah. Deal with it later. Next sprint.
You could just click the thing like, and it because Sentry comes up with who's seen the error, so it's like everyone has seen the error. Have to get out. That'd be great. Actually, we should
Well,
do that.
I think it just solves the problem with. Right, we should. I don't know if our fire alarm systems have an API, but we can find out. But I think the point is that you never pay down the backlog if you don't actually put it into the backlog, and I think it's something that we could do better.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing about backlogs, though, right? I mean, there's arguments for and against having even having a backlog, right? I mean, what do you think about those
Right.
situations?
I think the arguments for against having a backlog tend to, for me, to be against having features in a backlog. I think features are like the worst. Like my opinion is that I read a Medium article by someone whose name I've forgotten. We'll put it into the description around that. You never run out of good ideas, and so they don't need to be put into the backlog. And really, you can drive the customer needs by you'll know which ones are the highest priority. So having 150, 200, or whatever insane amount of features in your backlog is just a waste of time because you're never going to get to them all. You really want the five features to be well thought out that you're going to be doing in the next few months rather than 150 you'll never get to. So I'd rather have the backlog filled with errors and exceptions that need to be sorted than features. So that's really my opinion on the backlog. It needs to be more pressing stuff that has to be fixed. If there's an error in a system, it needs to be fixed more than a feature needs to be built.
Yeah, so it's like you want to keep that backlog. The backlog is really for things which are more immediate, right? It's not for things which are making it into actual features, like the real meat of the real purpose of the application. Those are things which, like you're saying, like everybody has ideas, and as long as you take ideas from all the people involved,
Mm-hmm.
you have no end to ideas. Anyone can be an idea man. They can be external or whatever. Who knows? But like the idea is to keep them out of the backlog because you end up with backlogs which can never end.
They never end. They get too big. I mean, the thing is this is that features may be the best idea you could come up with tomorrow and you could add it to the backlog, but it may not be prioritized as high as everything else. So you get to it a year from now because that's maybe how long it gets to, or maybe 6 months, and you take a look at it and you're like, oh, this feature, which was a great idea 6 months ago or 8 months ago, is no longer a good idea. So it's just been sitting in there pointlessly. And you're just going to resolve it anyway. So if it's really the best idea, it's always going to be making it to the top of the queue anyway. It's going to remain relevant. Whereas, having 150 ideas, which were a good idea at the time, are not so useful to be in the backlog. The backlog, I mean, if you have an error in the system, you can take a look at it and you can be like, even 6 months from now, well, if it's still there, it's still not been fixed, then it's still an error in the system. There's no debate to be had whether it's a good feature or not, whether it really, and if you're looking at the reasons why you want to fix it, be stability, solving for the customer, blah blah blah, then it's still always going to be a good idea to fix it. It's no longer up for debate like a feature is.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get you. It's like yeah, you keep those things. Yeah, because things errors and stuff will always be relevant because you basically have to judge it
Right.
based on
They're not really up for debate.
yeah, you have to judge it based on what's helping people or what will help people, and solving a bug that's hurting people will help people by default, right?
Right. There's very little debate to be had except for how high priority it is. It's like there's no bug where you're going to go, I'm not going to fix this, unless I mean I say that you may not want to fix it if it's literally a expected behavior or won't fix scenario. But I'm talking about general like something's not working as expected, kind of bug or error in the system.
Or actual
They
exception or something.
always and yeah, an actual exception. So they are always they just don't have there's no logic or debate to be had whether they should be fixed or not. They always should be fixed. Whereas a feature, like I said, can no longer be relevant in the future.
So I want to segue into one of the things
So,
which I remember, which is something about exceptions. I think did I put that in there?
hmm
It's like so exceptions and
yeah, about hiding exceptions.
yes. So I actually had this today with I won't actually name anybody or say anything, but one of our guys he wrote
Best
a
not to.
new what?
Best not to.
Yeah, because it's just, well, just I want to keep this as nondescript as possible. It's not a bad thing anyway. It's a good thing. Anyway, so one of our
Yeah.
guys he made a new class. It's like a caching class. He'll know who he is anyway if he watches this, but it's fine. We talked about it. Anyway, he made this caching class, right? And so it caches stuff, uses memcached or whatever, or any kind of caching mechanism. And so when I pulled the code and tried to run the tests for it, I got errors because I got exceptions rather because I'm not running a memcache server locally or in the environment where my tests run. So it then got me thinking about whether that code should throw an exception, because in a case where you can't retrieve cache, you really don't want it to throw an exception because that means it will probably exit out of that code and not continue. So if you perhaps run, say, an API call and your caching mechanism fails, like the memcache server goes down or isn't accessible, that would cause an exception at that point. So basically, any API calls, which probably is most of them who are using caching, will fail automatically because you have a server down, which is obviously a bad situation. You don't want that to happen. But my problem was hiding the
Well,
exception. When like, where do you hide the exception? Like, do you hide the? Do you try and catch the exception in the API call itself, or do you do it in the class itself?
yeah.
So we kind of figured out that we would do it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a real tricky one because it's a matter of concerns. It's like what should be concerned with the exception at
right.
that point, right? Because if you do a try and catch, you're essentially
Yeah.
hiding it.
Right.
Yes. So
What did you come up with?
what we came up with was we were kind of strapped for time anyway. We just wanted to get it working and not affecting anybody. So we just basically I actually don't remember what exactly we did now. This is why I have to write everything down.
Is the caching in a separate? Right. So here's the thing: if the so say you've got an API call and it's using a class, and maybe a class itself anyway, but we know that's not true in this case. But and so does the caching occur in the API call or in the class?
So when we're talking about like the class and stuff, I mean, there's a cache class which deals with interacting
Right.
with the cache technology, whatever it is, because it's a generic interface. So
Good.
it's
So that
basically
was my first question.
yeah. So basically, in the API call, there's a call to this class, there's a constructor
Yeah.
and whatever, and when it constructs, it tries to
So it's
connect. Basically, the point of connection is where there's a
yeah.
potential for this exception to throw up. And it's basically, do you put the
So
try and
when
catch in the API call at where it's being used, which could be all of them, like we said, or do you make it a lot easier and
yeah.
put the try catch into the class itself? It's a
So
real
my
tricky one.
opinion is it should be in the class. It's the concern of the class because if you look at the what is the purpose of the class? The class is to cache, which my first question I wasn't really clear about, but you answered it anyway, which was, what's the caching being done in say a user class, like within user class, or was it within a separate caching class? Because I'm not really familiar with the exact code. Um, so it's good that it's in its own caching class, which is great. That's what it should be. So it's abstracted from everything else, and you could change it easily, and it's not embedded in other classes. So that if you want to change caching, systems there, like uh, memcache versus something else, you could. But it seems like to me it would be the concern of the caching class to know whether it was working or not, and should be caught there and not within the API call.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, we came to the same conclusion because basically, you know what, my rules are basically whatever there was the simplest solution is usually the right one. So it was the simplest solution was
Right.
to
It
put it
is.
there. And what we came with what I didn't want to do though, I didn't want to hide the exception. The main reason for that is because we won't if our memcache server goes down and perhaps we don't have very good monitoring on the memcache server to make sure it's up. We basically have this situation where we're not ever utilizing caching, which we should be. So basically, we figured out
Hmm.
that we would put instead of an exception, we would basically inject into the PHP error log. So we just do a normal like a notice
Right.
level exception or notice level error. So it goes somewhere that is actually, I believe, Sentry picks those up anyway. So those will come out into the Sentry log, but it won't exit the code or anything. It won't just. It's not an exception
Hmm.
that stops the code from working. In my eyes, that's not an
So,
exception.
right. Um, so maybe I have a slight difference of opinion. Is that if the that's why these discussions are good. Is that if you have a system in place and you decide that you want to deliver some RESTful API, which is backed up by cool code behind it to make it all work, class-based, object oriented, and all the rest of it, and you decide that you want to request some data, and this data is requested often, so you decide to cache it, right? So
Hmm.
that's fair enough. Um, so caching is not a just a tool; it's a systems design. It's a way of leveraging a caching source so that you don't have to keep re-requesting the data. So really the answer really is here is that it should basically stop working. The API should stop working when there's no caching server. And then the real answer is that the caching server should be monitored and should be able to fall back onto perhaps a second caching server so it's redundant so that you really have the full system designed correctly. And of course, this is an ideal world we're talking about here, not the real world where you don't have all these wonderful things in
So
place. But where I see it is like the system is designed to use something and it's otherwise why would do we bother having caching? So you may as well not bother. It's not essential. We shouldn't have it at all. So it's either for me it should be considered essential or not.
I think you're right, and to kind of rebuttal that, but kind of in a different way. Um, Basically, you don't. I still think you should. The primary focus should be to make sure that nothing ever breaks for a user. So like you're always maintaining that user happiness stuff. So even if you take a bit of a
Right.
hit when it comes to performance, then that's fine. Again, it's not an ideal situation, but yeah, in an ideal world, you want both the exception not to cause a problem, and you also want the monitoring to be there for the
Mhm.
Memcache server or whatever, and you still want to know if there's a problem.
Right.
So all of those things combined really make the perfect situation.
I think it does, and let's just talk roughly a pseudo level what that might look like. It might look like some code that says, here, use the caching server for the data. The caching server doesn't respond, and it throws an exception, and also the class handles itself and says, updates the setting somewhere that says, don't use any more caching anymore because we ain't going to be able to do that anymore. And then from now on, the API goes, all right, skipping the caching, but the error is still logged normally. So you get the ability to continue serving the API calls whilst you can, assuming that it's not so critical it's going to take down the system anyway, at least not immediately. And hopefully you can scale up to support it in some way if it's possible. But you also get to deliver the user's data at the same time. So you get like a switch basically that said to use caching or not,
Yeah,
throws the error, it's kept, and then you can turn it off. And the other point is we briefly just talked about, which was that redundancy in caching servers and monitoring should be in place anyway, that we can kind of pick up all of those. But this is all like best world scenario stuff that you don't want to suppress the error. It's either you needed caching servers or you didn't. And if you
yeah.
didn't, then it was a bad systems design choice in the first place to have it.
Yeah, I think basically from the perspective of the class, you have to think of it as if its one purpose is to connect to a service and do something with that service. So you have to think about what it's
Right.
concerned. It's concerned with that connection, so it should deal with that connection. So like I don't think there's ever a case where you don't want that class to deal with problems with the connection. Like that's kind of what it's meant to do.
No,
So yeah,
it's its job. Its concern at this point, at this scope that we just talked about, is it should deal with failing over and whether to use cache at all. And if it can manage all of those things, then that's to me where it should live. The API call shouldn't really give a crap. It should just serve, deliver API, deliver resource basically, deliver the resource you requested.
yeah.
Pretty much no matter what.
Yeah, I mean it's all this. The hardest thing I think I found with programming is figuring out where things are supposed to be concerned. Like what a class, I try to keep a very narrow scope for a class. The classes should be very narrow and keep a very specific thing in mind, but they usually grow beyond their purpose. And this is where actually I want to bring up refactoring, because refactoring is a huge part of avoiding that or dealing with that. And there's a great book that I want to give like a quick plug to just before we go into that. And it's called Refactoring: Improving the Design of Existing Code, and it's by a bunch of authors who are really cool people. Especially the Kent Beck is an author in it, and a couple of other people that I'm afraid I don't remember the name of. But anyway, it's a fantastic book about refactoring. It's pretty much the book on refactoring, and it's really awesome. But anyway, what were you going to say?
I need to read that. I was just going to say, like you said, it's difficult to, classes can grow, right? It's one of those things that, and this is really where it does come into systems design, and really having these things well documented in the first place, and also giving thought to it. There are many projects still, especially in smaller companies, where there isn't any thought given to systems design, and so we talked about this, and it's in the book that you suggested and I'm currently reading, which is Code Simplicity, is that you don't really want to design by committee, because that's really where it gets even worse. So the fact that some one person is, but there, some classes can be big. I think an example of one of the classes that can kind of become huge. So you've got a user class, for example, right? User class might start with just like creating a user and managing the user, but then it might be like this user joins with another user in a friendship in some way, and then you have the managing of all the user friendships, and then you've got, well, what do I do when I want to get some friends of this user, and then is that user perspective, or is this now a friendship class that needs to deal with all that? And the answer is probably in this particular case a friendship class to deal with the management of that. But the point being is it grows and you're not sure which scope it is, and really it comes back to design, systems design. You've got to really see everything at a larger big picture to figure out where things fit and how things grow accordingly and how you can split them out. And that's really my opinion on it. But that's where you're talking about refactoring, because sometimes you end up in a situation where it has grown out of scope and now you need to fix it, and that's what refactoring is about, which you're one of the kings of refactoring.
So like with this, because I know from current experience at least, that a user class that I'm working on in particular has grown way beyond the scope of what it should be dealing with, and it's the role of refactoring. If you get, I'm still, I guess I'm going to say I'm intermediate level when it comes to refactoring, because I'm still getting there with this in terms of speed of refactoring. And you have to be very careful with refactoring, because basically the core thing of refactoring is you have to have tests, and some of this code doesn't have tests, so you have to make sure you write the tests first before doing the refactor to make sure it all works. And the thing with refactoring is you have to make sure you don't change any public interfaces that other code is relying on. In this case, it's in a library which is used by other repositories, so you can't really afford to change too much of the public interface without really messing up some other people or doing something really kind of dumb. Unfortunately, the thing that I'm working on at the moment will change the public interface, but it will only be adding to it to add functionality, so it's not actually going to be as such changing the default functionality, it's just going to be extending it. But luckily that's all tested, so basically it's been really fun today, actually. It was, I don't know when today is, but when this recording goes out. But I have been working on refactoring. Sorry?
This isn't when the recordings were going out, but it's November 6th.
Oh, okay.
Right now. But obviously the recording go out later. But
yeah,
there's two different things. One of the things, obviously is we've changed and we were started before, and now we're a larger company and it's only going to get bigger. Is that my job is changed to something that I couldn't divert a lot of time to, but now I can have all the time in the world to make it work. Is that designing systems in a way where we can try and avoid and have to refactor as little as possible because the thought has gone into it before we've done it, rather than trying to retrospectively trying to fix it after.
So I would like to somewhat rebuttal, if I may, about the. So I think that there's a balance, right, between planning and being agile, and it's kind of the.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, I know you agree. I'm just gonna go ahead anyway, but it's so sure. Basically. The idea is not to plan for things. I mean, you already know this, but I'm just going to say for the benefit of other people, you don't want to plan too much, or you don't want to plan for things which you can't be certain of. You basically say you're writing a class to do with users, right? And you only know that it's going to hold a name and an email. You're going to only put those fields in because you know that's what's going to happen. Maybe you think there might be a friend system in the future, but you don't know that that's going to happen, so you don't write it. And then it's the goal of refactoring to add those methods and then you just keep refactoring until
I do completely agree with you. I guess I wasn't particularly clear. I'm more really being to be more specific, it's really about my focus is design patterns, so that when you come to do anything you follow a certain pattern. And so that when refactoring, which is almost inevitable to as things evolve, like you said, you don't want to plan way outside the scope. But if you're following a certain design pattern, at least it's consistent. So that classes live in the same place, or whatever it is, in terms of systems, that they are consistent. So that they're kind of like rules, really. Just a set of rules that any of the developers can follow, so that you get somewhat consistent systems across the board. But refactoring, and you don't want to design too far out of scope, but when you do understand a problem that needs to be solved, is looking at it quickly to see where does it fit into the existing system rather than just adding it. And I think it's where you can kind of avoid some of the refactor that may be done otherwise.
Basically a system of constant redesign where you're constantly looking at what is like, maybe even you get to the stage where you're like, okay, the initial overall design of the system doesn't really match what the system is doing now. So then you basically start to refactor it into a different design. But the ideal is that you do that in stages with tests and refactor things slowly over to the new design. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. If you usually don't have to do things which are on that level of scope if you've been constantly redesigning through the process.
Right. Constantly redesigning, keeping to consistent patterns, and also simplicity is at the heart of all systems designs. You don't want, where you can avoid it, you want the least amount of technologies doing the most amount of things, and again, the most amount of things you want to be doing is whatever is necessary, as many are actually necessary, system critical, and required to make something work. You don't want 10 caching engines on 3 different databases if you can help it.
No.
But you design to as complex as it needs to be. If you have a particular use case where you really do need to have multiple database engines, and I know of some that do exist, then that's what you need to do. But otherwise, you have to take a hard look, and sometimes it is a case of sacrificing on some performance for simplicity and systems maintenance, or understanding that you're sacrificing complexity in terms of, but you can have better performance. And so depending on what's required at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where you can't avoid complexity in certain cases, and that's fine. And sometimes adding complexity actually makes things simpler. There are a couple of cases like adding, say, a generic top level class to deal with something and then extending it later on. That's kind of adding complexity to make things more manageable. That's what I mean. Actually, it's not like adding adding complexity to get simplicity. It's more like adding complexity, but also gaining organization in that process.
Right. And I kind of wrap those up as being design patterns. You may add some complexity, which is a complex design pattern, which gives you simplicity in the end.
Yeah, it's like there's a whole
It's
like
something that gets better.
Yeah, there's like a whole. I think it's like if we're talking about PHP in specifics, it's there's things like the factory pattern and things like that. There's a whole bunch of them. I don't remember them all. I remember the factory the most because it's the easiest to remember. But there's a whole bunch of them. I think it's observer and delegate or something like that. There's another one. I don't remember it. But yeah, like following those well.
It's a cool topic. It's one that interests me.
Yeah, there's actually another good book, but unfortunately I can't remember the name of it. But it's I think it's called JavaScript Design Patterns. I think it's by Adi Osmani. Asmani? I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Probably read that.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. But it's to do with JavaScript specifically, and there's a lot about what defines a pattern, and I don't know. A lot of it's beyond me at the moment, but it's cool though. It's got lots of big words in it that will string together in cool ways.
Yeah, something for me that I admit, it seems to be design patterns and just overall systems design is something that I just really enjoy in terms of, I can see somehow I'd like to see all the different pieces and how they all fit together. And I think that's just it's just how I am. Whereas I like you guys to make it. You make it better than I can.
Well, that's why I'm a code monkey, isn't it?
I know. That's why you're a code monkey, yeah.
All right, let's say our goodbyes and do our if we have any shameless plugs to do, then let's do them. I'll go first because I have some. So basically, you can reach me on my YouTube channel, which is non-tech related, but is nonetheless is about games and stuff. It's youtube.com/BigTallBill, and you can reach me on Twitter as well. Also, twitter.com/BigTallBill. No one seems to have the name, which is cool. And I think that's it, really.
And you can click here to subscribe.
Oh yeah, we've got to add one of those. Like
down there.
Mine's hard to see because I minimized that. Like
yeah, I can see it. It's
in this corner. Yeah, I'll put one of those there maybe. Or just make us look like fools.
Yeah. That's fine. No, you can do that. You can make me look like a fool. I don't mind. I don't have any plugs really. You can tweet me on Whoop, and you can which is WUUP. You can go to my Twitter account and send me a tweet, and I'll probably never reply to you. Just kidding. I'll do that. I'll reply to you. Send me a tweet. Otherwise, you should subscribe to Bill's channel. I mean, there's only one thing on my channel, and it's my dog picking up a giant stick.
I think people are going to be really interested in that, though. What's your Twitter? What's your not Twitter?
Sure, it is.
What's your YouTube?
My YouTube I think is debug, yeah, but it's YEH, but yeah.
I'll put a link in the
D. Check it out in the comments. Yeah, it's like the comments will be just over there.
Well, they'll be below, like this.
So. And otherwise, I'm reading the Code Simplicity book, and you should probably read that too, because every programmer or anyone interested in software development should just read it. It's just a good read. I've been enjoying it lately. But otherwise, I'm just going to be hanging out. This is a cool podcast, and we'll be doing another one again soon.
And maybe we'll have a guest next time, possibly, potentially.
Yeah.
All right, so
we're going to get Barack Obama.
We can get Mr. President. What do you think about refactoring?
Yeah, we should do that. See if it's available.
Maybe he wrote the code for Obamacare. and it's actually just his own project on GitHub. All
Yeah.
right, so
It's all in one commit. Why would you only do one commit, Mr. President? You gotta space these out.
that'd be awesome. All right, so I'm not gonna hang up, but I'm just gonna say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye. Cheerio. Ta-ra.